What's up, gang? I have just recently completed the new story quest for Wuthering Waves, and I got a couple thoughts. Welcome to the channel. It's Connor's Thoughts, and I got a couple thoughts that I want to talk about this game, okay? And I think it's very important that we talk about some of these things. So let's dive into it. So as I said before, I have just finished the main story quest for Act 7 of Wuthering Waves, and I'm currently chilling here in the new city that has been added into the game. Now, I will give a small disclaimer as we've dived deeper into this. There's probably going to be some minor spoilers, so if you haven't done the story yet, you may want to do that first before we talk into this more, because I'm probably going to be overlaying some story footage over this video. So again, this is still a little bit of like a story review slash first impressions to this patch, and I think that's very important to say because there's more exploration to do. The story quest really is just kind of the lead into this region. There's nothing breaking it up. There's nothing else that is going on, and actually a bunch of the region is kind of locked down as you're going into it. So that's why I can't give a full review of kind of like the area or region. But aesthetically, starting off aesthetically, I think this region looks fantastic. I love kind of like the winter mountain vibe that they've got going on here with the hot springs. I love the color palette for it. I love some of the new exploration mechanics, kind of changing things up like we saw in the developer notes. And so far, from everything that I've been able to experience, they've done a really good job on this region, and I'm really happy with the development that they've done. I think they do a great job of using the story to bring you into the region as well, with some really exciting moments. Now let's zero in. That's kind of first impressions of the whole kind of region and area. Let's zero in on the story itself. Let me give you a brief little overview of what happens in the story. Now, the story quest starts off in the main city of Huanglong, where we kind of get to explore a little bit more of Abby, the new entity that pops out of your hand, what has consumed the crownless, what has consumed the dreamless so far, and is some kind of tie to some otherworldly power that has been embedded within you. Clearly, there's something unique and different going on with that. My current running theory is that that is the being that was implanted in you by the goddess Lucia that we saw in the very opening cinematic of the game. And while I do think it was really cool getting introduced to this character, I think the character of Abby is also pretty good. It is way better, infinitely better than freaking Paimon, okay? Abby doesn't give us the toddler treatment of repeating storylines over and over again as we're talking through the quest. They don't just sit there and repeat it. They're engaging in the story and they're part of the conversation. They're actually helping drive the narrative forward. That is an absolute massive win when it comes to this character and this being. I was so incredibly worried that it was going to be the next Paimon. This being is still definitely going to be our travel companion as the game progresses. You can already tell that's what they've set it up to be, but I'm glad that it's not going to be the same kind of experience of what we've had previously. We then go up, talk to Sanhua, who then tells us that we need to go find Jinshi in Mount Firmament. We need a wayfinder. That wayfinder ends up being Changi, who again, we end up spending a huge portion of this story quest with. Once we enter into Mount Firmament with Changi, we do find out that there is some kind of time effect that's taking place, something that is going awry, leaving a bunch of the people and the animals in the city all in a frozen state, which has been really interesting. We find out that this is a result of a phenomenon that has been actively happening on Mount Firmament for a long time that has been kept under control by Jue. But now that Jue has been trapped away, it is allowing this effect to go awry. After learning this, we managed to connect with Jinshi, where we find out that basically both Jinshi and Jue are dying slowly. Because they are beings who are linked through their resonation, they do resonate together, they are able to kind of determine the state of the other, and both of them are currently in a state of decay. Jue due to a wound from centuries before, and Jinshi from a condition that she's been battling against. She's also slowly in the process of overclocking. After we reunite with Jinshi, we then continue some more exploration and puzzles through Mount Firmament, where eventually Changi is left behind to fight off some Fraxidus, but no, it's not a self-sacrifice way. It's just understanding that she's got other things that she needs to do. Changi is an absolute badass, and we're greeted by an absolutely fantastic cinematic of that happening, and it was awesome. After that, we continue some more puzzles within Mount Firmament, where we were finally able to free Jue, and we are confronted with the truth of the matter. With Jue slowly dying, that is going to unleash the full effects of this time phenomenon taking place on Mount Firmament, and unless something else is done, the whole region of Jinzhou is going to be locked in a chaotic state of time, where things can be going forward in time, backwards in time, freezing in time, so many chaotic things where time will just cease to function as it should. Because Jue is going to die, they propose using the last of their power to freeze all of Jinzhou so that they can be left in a preserved state to be eventually freed by another civilization, hopefully in the future, which they have foreseen through their divination. Jinshi does not agree with this. She thinks that's a terrible idea, which leads to a conflict between the two, where Jue is pushing Jinshi on her resolve, where she wants to go forward with the prophecy that Jue has given, where the two of them are destined to fight. If the two of them battle against each other, it will lead to a second awakening for Jinshi, where she will be able to take on the burden of leadership and responsibility and the authority over this time ability that Jue currently holds. This does come at great risk to herself, and if everything goes wrong, it could end up leading to a lot of destruction. But through Jinshi's determination and faith, she proceeds forward with this anyway, which brings us to the climactic finale between Jue and Jinshi in our boss fight. Fortunately, Jinshi comes out on top, and she's able to restore the time of Mount Firmament, helping free all of its denizens, and we get a nice little resolution where we're greeted by a secret end game scene, which I won't spoil that here because it's not really relevant to the story review. Now, with that brief summary out of the way, let's go through it. I'm not gonna lie, the story itself is pretty yappy at times, suffers from a little bit of pacing issues in small portions of it, but overall, I am really happy with the direction of the story and what we've gotten so far. I will say the opening portion with Abby, and when we're diving into that with Yang Yang and Qixia, that portion has a little bit of a pacing issue to me. I think we sit there and talk way too long, like the yapping just goes on for just a little. I think it overstays its welcome just a little bit. By the end of that conversation, I was like done. I was like, okay, I want to go to Mount Firmament, because even after that main conversation, there's like a small time skip of a week, and then you go back to the same area, and it just kind of feels like you're rehashing the same things over and over again, just like a little bit too much in that portion, but overall still really happy with that. Well, I think the story was really trying to intentionally hype up Jinshi for people, especially because she's the first banner in the game that they're trying to get you to pull for. I really still think Changi actually stole the show, as you spend the majority of the story quest with her. I would say more than half of this story quest, probably close to 3/4 of this story quest, is us with Changi. At least half of it almost exclusively with Changi. And don't get me wrong, I am not complaining. I loved every moment that Changi was on screen, and I think she did a great job bringing this air of mystery to her own character that made me really interested about the future and what we're going to learn about her. But also she did a good job in bringing us into the mysteries of Mount Firmament as we continue to explore that region more and more. Overall, I think the story is really good. It feels a little more isolated, but I love that it gives way more screen time to Changi and Jinshi, getting to expand on their characters a little bit more. Jinshi operates primarily behind the scenes in the whole first 6 acts of the game, with her coming on screen a few times, so it was great to finally see her come more to fruition and seeing her role as magistrate in Jinzhou. I think overall the rest of the pacing works decently well. It's harder for someone like me when I'm playing a game like this on stream, where there's long stretches of story, where I kind of just have to sit there and react a little bit to it and what's going on, and there's not as much active gameplay taking place. I think from just a standard player perspective, if you're interested in the lore of the universe and what's going on here, I do think it was really cool. Without absolutely spoiling everything, there was also some pretty crazy revelations about the rover themselves that came after the end of the act, where we kind of got to ask Jue some questions, but I won't spoil all of that here. But I love some of the revelations of our character, and it helped deepen the mystery. Although it did unlock some crazy levels of power scaling that we've learned about our previous existence as a rover, which is absolutely wild. I was a little bit disappointed that there wasn't any kind of expansion more onto the goddess Lucia and what she is kind of bringing to the table. There was really only been that one hint of her that was in about Act 5, I believe. There wasn't anything on that in this portion of the story quest, but I digress. That's a small little nitpick from me. Overall, I'm a big fan with how the story played out. I think they did a pretty great job of unfolding it. One thing that I am really excited for is that they did a good job of teasing what is kind of coming in the future. Act 6 kind of wrapped up with such a nice bow on it that it kind of felt like the story of Jinzhou was already over. But then kind of reopening the case of Mount Firmament, it seems like they've kind of unlocked the next stages to the story a little bit better, which gives me a nice little teaser for the future. So I think they did a great job of bringing those two things back together. If I had to rate the story quest out of 10, I'm going to rate it a Changi out of 10, which for me is a 10 out of 10. I'm just kidding. I would say it was probably still like a 7. I think the cinematics were still super well done. I do like the world building that was come as a result. There were some minor pacing issues, and I just don't think the boss fight, while it was still really cool, the boss fight didn't land as well as I had hoped. Unfortunately, something that's kind of happened to me is the boss fight in Belobog for Honkai Star Rail, where you're fighting Cocolia, the cinematic nature of that, and even actually what we just encountered as well with Penacony, the way that they narratively tie the battle into the story and the way that those battles unfold as the fight progresses, it's just still really hard to compete with something like that from a gacha gameplay perspective. Now, I know they're different styles of game with turn-based combat, so it always is going to look a little bit different, but I do still think Kuro could push that more and tie those fights a little bit better to the story and have more of a story be told throughout the fights and not simply just like you do the fight and everybody moves on, if that makes sense. But that's where I'm going to land. I'm probably about a 7 out of 10 on the story. I think a great next step for the game. Great new region. I'm excited to explore it more, but let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What were your thoughts about the story quest of Wuthering Waves in Act 7? I'd love to hear it down below. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe for future Wuthering Waves and other gacha related content. Shout out to all the patrons and Twitch subscribers who help support me in what I do here on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.